elements in the world, and he's naming the 5 great elements, these earth, water, fire, air, and then he talks about how there are senses, there are working senses, and then there are sense objects. There are different ways of counting in Sankhya. You'll find in different places in the Shastra where different sages count up the elements in different configurations, in different combinations. But it all comes out to the same thing, ultimately, and that is there's material energy and then there's spiritual energy, and you're trying to find out what's behind the whole thing. That's the idea. So I'm going to read the purport. It's a little analytical, but it'll really stimulate. Think in terms of seeing the world in a new way. Don't just take it for granted, but see the body that you have as made of these elements, and see it as made of senses. As I was saying, look at the eye and see, what is the eye? Don't just take it for granted. Oh, Bonnie blue eyes. But, look and see, what is it? What's going on here? And try to analyze the elements like a Sankhya philosopher. Here's the purport. Did I read the translation? Yes. I did. Okay, here's the purport. From all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns, and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world can be understood as follows. First, there are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the 5 great elements, Mahabhuta. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. Then there are 5 senses for acquiring knowledge, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Then 5 working senses, voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then above the senses there is the mind, which is within and which can be called the sense within. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, of all the senses, I am the mind. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are the 5 objects of the senses, smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. Now the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activities. The field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, representations of the 5 great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms represented by consciousness and conviction are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities. The 5 great elements are a gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of false ego, technically called the materialistic conception, or tamasa buddhi, intelligence and ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of material nature. The unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhan. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail, along with their interactions, should study the philosophy in more detail. In Bhagavad Gita, a summary only is given. The body is the representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body which are 6 in number. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, then it begins to decay, and the last stage it vanishes. Therefore, the field is a non-permanent material thing. However, the kshetrajna, the knower of the field, its proprietor, is different. So, here Krishna is giving a detailed, a summary of what comprises this field of activities. And if we just look carefully and notice that the body is made of these elements, we can separate ourselves and understand that we're the one observing the elements. We're not the elements themselves. I don't say that I hand, I say my hand, because it's something that it's an object that I'm using, but it's not me. And the earth within the body is something that's all around us. The earth that this body is made up of is no different than the earth that you find in your garden. And if you don't believe me, then just wait till you burn your whole body and then take a look at what you get. And it's going to be a little box of earth that you can mix into your garden if you like. And that's what it is. And then the water's evaporated out, and the air, as we said earlier in the Shriya Upanishad, Vayur Anilam Amritam Atedam Bashmantam Shariram Om Kratos Smara Kritam Smara Kratos Smara Kritam Smara. Let this temporary body be burnt to ashes, and let the air of life be merged with the totality of air. Now, my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices, and because you are the ultimate beneficiary, please remember all that I have done for you. In that verse, the Bhakti Yogi is anticipating what is being described in this purport, that the body will merge back into the great elements again. It's just a temporary configuration made by the modes of material nature to facilitate our journey that we're making through this material world. So this is important. We must understand, I'm not the body. Aham brahmasmi. I'm spirit. I'm something different from the body. And this is the basis of all impetus for advancement in spiritual life, to understand that there's more. Yoga means plus. It means, and material life means minus, and you lose everything at the end. But the big plus means that you're not meant for this world of decay. You're meant for the world that's parastasmat tu bhavo no vyakto vyaktat sanatana. It's never annihilated. You're part of that world. You're part of the world of nectar. And so you should distinguish yourself and make sure you understand you're not connected to this body or the mind. And the senses are just instruments that we're utilizing. And therefore Krishna recommends that we make this analysis for ourselves. You have human intelligence, you can do this. Indriyani priyanyahur indriyebhye paramanaha manasastu para buddhir yo buddhehe paratastu saha. The lowest of all is the senses, this body made of the material elements and their objects. And above the senses, the mind. We can see this by analyzing. Above the mind is the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul, the Kshetragya, who knows all these things, can observe them and actually see for himself that they're just going on as part of the material interaction, and I'm completely different from them. This is an aspect of advancement in devotional service. Naiva kinchit koromiti yukto manyete tat vivit pashyan shinvan shvishanjigran ashnan gachan swapan shwasan. Pralapan vishvridan grinnan unmishan nimishan api indriyan indriyateshu vartanta iti tarayan. The person in divine consciousness observes the body as it's eating and seeing and moving about and evacuating and receiving and doing all kinds of things. And he thinks, naiva kinchit. Kinchit means naiva. I'm not doing anything. The body's going through these motions. The machine is acting, but I'm not. I'm separate from the body. So this chapter gives us the knowledge, the technology behind it, and everything we need to analyze for ourselves and use our superior intelligence to understand that I'm not the body. And then to cultivate a life based on advancement for the soul, not comfort for the body, which will never be had. You can never be completely happy in this world, and you can never be completely miserable either. It's all mixed. Now the next verse is just, it's a verse you want to go tell everyone in San Francisco. Just go to every door and say, listen, I got a verse for you. I got to tell you this verse. No, turn off the television. Seriously, I got to tell you. Because this verse, by following, will lift you above the bodily conception of life, which is an animal conception. Animals suffer because they're in ignorance. And human beings are like animals if they don't get knowledge. And this is how you get knowledge. This is the process of knowledge spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who else could give a list like this? Now here it is. This is the process of knowledge. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. There you have it. It's so analytical. I mean, first we have a description, a summary of what all the field of activities is made up of. So we can put that aside. We can look at it and say, that's not me. And then I may say, how do I understand that separation between me and the field? Because it seems like I am the field, the mind, the senses. I'm so used to interacting with them and identifying with them that separation from them seems impossible. Even amidst the practice of yoga and so many things, I still revert because of past habit to this idea that I'm the body. So how do we come free? And then Krishna gives the elements on the path to knowledge and separation between me and my identification with the material elements in the material world and the field which I'm just a resident in. And now Srila Prabhupada gives a description of what each one of these processes means. And they're profound, so I'm going to start reading them unless you stop me. Purport. This process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements, as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of the 24 elements. And the process of knowledge as described here is the means to get out of it. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse, Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.18.12. Yasyasvi bhaktir bhagavatiya kinshana sarvair gunais tatra samasate sura. All the good qualities of knowledge develop in one who has attained the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. And for the knowledge outlined here, the items may be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. The material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others. But from the point of view of a man in perfect knowledge who knows that he is not this body, anything, honor or dishonor, pertaining to this body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception, People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently sometimes it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual service, one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items. So far, maybe we have some comment or question. Anything that came into your mind? Yes, Chaitanya Charanamrita Prabhu. Glories to yours. We need to have a microphone over here. So we're doing the Brihat Madanga.
Haribo. These are listed in order as a humility, pridelessness, non-violence. That's actually kind of the order. Well, the purport just mentioned the first one. Humility is the first step, and then the others follow. Is if I'm reading.
Well, not
that right?
necessarily in order, because as Prabhupada says in the purport, that if these other 19, he jumps in line here with unalloyed devotional service and says this one's the most important. If you don't do the other 19, or if you do this one and not the other 19, you'll get the other 19 gradually. And if you do the other 19 and you don't do this one, then it's called in the Srimad Bhagavatam shrama, means useless labor. You're working hard for nothing. So not necessarily in order. Yes.
I really like in the purport when Srila Prabhupada states, after saying that all of the 19 are useless without devotional service, but if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within one. That's very encouraging that's like the starting point. Well, the starting point, then he says, develops one, you have spiritual master, but that's the key. That's, the most important is devotional service, bhakti yoga, so.
Yeah. There's a, yeah. Any other question? Yes.
These qualities, they seem to be like, all of these are qualities, but Prabhupada starts the purport by saying this process of knowledge. So that's something that I did not understand, if you could explain. Thank you.
Well, you could look at it either way. I mean, they are qualities, but there's a humility can be a process also. In other words, it can be not just a quality, but it's something that you practice. In other words, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Trinad api sunichena, toror api sahishnuna, amanina manadena, kirtaniya sadaharihi. That if you practice giving respect to all others and not taking any respect for yourself, and you are as humble as grass and as tolerant as a tree and so forth, this is a kind of a practice. By doing that, you open yourself to all kinds of knowledge, not just spiritual, but mundane also. Try going into a college classroom and just put your feet up on the desk and look out the window when the professor's talking and see how much he or she wants to tell you about the process of quantum physics or whatever you're listening to. In other words, if you're not humble in any situation, you don't follow that process of humility, then you're pretty much shut out from a lot of things. So these are qualities, but they can be applied as a process and practiced and applied in one's life. That's the point. Another point?
Unallowed service to the Lord will provide the rest of the quality then.
Yes,
even if it is.
that's what's being brought out here. This verse, Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavati Akinchana Sarvar Gunas Tatra Samasate Sura. This is quoted from the fifth canto of the Bhagavatam, and it's a verse. Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavati Akinchana. Akinchana Bhakti means if you perform unmotivated devotional service, that it doesn't have it's pure devotional service. Samasate Sura. Then you attract all of the good qualities. You attract all the good qualities. What it says, all the good qualities of the demigods. In fact, you surpass that by performing devotional service. In the Sri Upanishad, we hear that Saparijakshukram. There's room. Make sure she knows there's a place here. Plenty of room in here, right? Here, we'll just move up by 7.5 inches. Yes, this point about if one performs devotional service is brought up in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Rupa Goswami mentions it in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In Shastra, there is a story of Magrari the hunter. And Magrari was trained from the time he was a young boy how to hunt. He was a hunter, came from a family of hunters. But his father trained him to half-kill animals so that they would suffer. And when Narada Muni came through the forest one day, he saw a string of animals squirming on the ground, having been half-killed very expertly by Magrari. And Narada, being a Vaishnava, was compassionate for these suffering animals, and he went off the path into the forest and found Magrari behind a tree waiting to kill other animals. And Magrari greeted him but said, why did you come into the forest? You're scaring away all the animals. And he realized that Narada Muni was a saintly person, so he offered him something. He said, would you like some skin of deer or something? Or I have lots of killed animals here. Would you like some? And Narada said, I don't want anything like that. I have one thing to ask from you, and that is that I understand you're a hunter. It's your livelihood. So he said, when you go hunting, don't half kill the animals. Kill them all the way. Don't leave them suffering, because when you leave them suffering, then you'll have to suffer yourself. And the words of a saintly person are very potent, and by speaking to Magrari and by seeing Narada Muni, Magrari's heart changed, and he became a little fearful about this sinful reaction he was going to get. It was the first awakening of knowledge he'd ever had. Actually, he was innocent. He didn't know about this. He was simply living according to how he had been raised. But now he had been awakened by Narada Muni's association. This is how one awakens in spiritual life, by the association of an advanced person. And then he asked, so how can I be free from this? And Narada said, I'll instruct you, but first you have to break your bow. And this would be commensurate to someone approaching a person at Oracle and saying, first you throw your laptop out the window. Then I'll tell you. That's his entire livelihood. Oh, thank you for coming, and there's plenty of room. Everyone, please come in. Hare Krishna. Welcome. Please welcome. Come on in. Hare Krishna. There's plenty of room here, there, and everywhere. Okay. Good. Sunny will help direct things. So, should I continue? I just want to finish the story of Magrari. If I should continue, please raise your hand. Okay. Magrari broke his bow, and then Narada Muni instructed him in the process of devotional service. And he began following Narada Muni's instructions. Now, later, Narada Muni left after giving him instruction, and he came back with one of his sadhu friends. And as they approached the place where Magrari was now living as a sadhu himself, sadhu means a saintly person, and Magrari saw them coming, he came out of his little hut and he began running down the road to greet his spiritual master, Narada Muni. But as he was running down the road, he was hopping from one place to another in looked like a very funny dance he was doing. And when they finally met with Magrari, they asked, "Why were you hopping from here to there on the road?" And he said, "There were ants on the road, and I didn't want to step on an ant," because he didn't want to kill an ant. And this story is given again and again in Shastra to show that a person who comes in contact with a saintly person and who performs the process of devotional service becomes infused with all these qualities. In this case, Magrari was accustomed to killing and making animals suffer. And after he had taken to the process of devotional service, he was reluctant to step on an ant. And this is actually true. This is what happens. These qualities naturally come out from a person who performs devotional service. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't also observe these other qualities, and we live in an environment in spiritual life in which we can actually cultivate the higher modes of nature and follow these other processes, because they an environment in which we're observing these kinds of things that are mentioned: humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, and practicing them will only help us to advance. As Krishna says here, there are processes of knowledge. Rakshit.
I thought another important point that is made here, which is at the end of that second paragraph on humility, is that all of these items or attributes, it says, can be considered as criteria for one to judge oneself, how far one has progressed in advancement of spiritual development. Because earlier on it states that if you accept this process, you will approach the absolute truth.
Yeah, your point's very well taken. And of course, I may have a tendency when I read these to begin looking in others to see, or criticizing others, that where's your humility? But it's more fruitful to look at myself and find out how I'm progressing. You know, that these I can see as signposts for my advancement in devotional service. In fact, this item, humility, in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita is listed by Sanatana Goswami, the word dainya. Dainya means utter humility. And Sanatana Goswami says, with the advancement of bhakti, dainya increases proportionately. And practically, they're indistinguishable. As one advances in devotional service, one's utter humility also increases. And when one reaches the topmost position, which is called prema, or pure love for Krishna, then that utter humility is always present. So yes, we can look for those. The Bhagavatam describes a progressive path, beginning with verse 17 of the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantaksto hi bhadrani vidhunoti suritsatam hi abhadrani. All by hearing and chanting, by this process, Shrinvatam swakata Krishna, hearing about Krishna. This is the primary and first step in advancing in devotional service. Krishna helps to purify the impurities within the heart. And the next verse says, Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. That as one continues the process, practically all of the inauspicious things within the heart are expelled. And then tada rajastamo bhava kama lobadayaschaye cheta iter anavidam stitam sattve prasidati. Tada means at that time, the modes of rajas and tamas, which are the lower modes of material nature, which through which we exhibit these lower qualities, they become vanquished completely. And one comes to the position of Shuddha Sattva, or goodness which isn't tinged by the lower modes of rajas and tamas. And from that position, Shuddha Sattva, one can see Krishna, one can understand Krishna, and one attains steadiness in devotional service. And therefore, as Rakshit Prabhu was making an excellent point, Prabhupada has said in the purport, we must be able to judge for ourselves and see how these lower tendencies are being expelled as we're performing the process of devotional service. We can see for ourselves. Another example, of course, is given in the Shastra, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the discussion between the Navayogendras and King Nimi. Bhakti parishanu bhava viraktir anyata traisa trika ekakala prapadya manasya tasya tasus tushti pushti shuddha payonagasam. And that is that when a hungry person eats food, he or she knows for him or herself that they're becoming nourished, satisfied, and the hunger is going away with every bite. And so similarly, for one who is engaged in the process of surrender to Krishna and approaching Krishna, prapadya manasya, that person also experiences, you can tell, you don't need a certificate from others necessarily. You can see for yourself that I'm becoming freed from the lower modes of material nature. You know, I'm no longer attracted by these sense objects. You become free because we're enslaved by them. They're called bad masters. Kama dinam katina katida palita durnideshas tesham jata mayina karuna natrapa no pashanti utsri jaitanata yarupate samprata labda buddhis tamayata sharanamayam mamdhyang shatmadhasye. This beautiful verse expresses the feeling of a Vaishnav who is advancing on the path of devotional service, who says, for how long and how many ways have I served the bad masters of lust, anger, desire, greed, and all these things are pulling me in different directions. They've never given me time off, they've never given me mercy, and I never questioned them. I simply followed them. But now that my intelligence is awakened, I'm no longer bowing to their demands, but now I'm going to Krishna and I'm asking, please, give me some service. And this freedom to be able to distinguish between the pushings of the senses and the lower modes of material nature and the understanding that now I have a choice to serve Krishna and not the lower modes of nature and my senses. This is the awakening which comes as the modes of material nature diminish. And we should be able to see that in ourselves and feel it for ourselves. It's not a pretense that I pretend to be humble. Of course, tolerance is mentioned here also. You can pretend to be humble, but it's really hard to pretend to be tolerant. Because after a while, you'll snap and say, I told you not to. Yes.
I know we didn't get in there, but for me, every time when I hear this tolerance,
You heard when you heard
tolerance?
What? Tolerance.
I am sorry, but I don't understand that word yet.
You don't understand it. Well,
A practical point.
Tolerance means that we're steady because we're a soul, actually. We're really, ultimately, asango hyayam purushaha. The Vedas say, ultimately the soul has no association with material nature, and a self-realized person who understands that's not affected by the changes that go on externally. In the mind, and that's where they're all drawn up, actually. It's Krishna says that Prajahati yada kamam sarvam parta manogatan. Manogatan means the mind goes, and it really goes. It goes everywhere, and it assumes things, it jumps to conclusions. What else does it do? It takes things personally, right? Somebody looks at you funny and you take it personally. That's all concoction in the mind is going on, right? So a person who becomes detached from the bodily conception of life begins to tolerate all kinds of things. In the beginning by practice, but by practicing tolerance, we actually see that I'm unaffected. Like urges come into our purview, and urges have a certain vocabulary. An urge says, I will be here forever, so give in or die. And if I tolerate that urge, it just goes away. And you go, what happened to that big bully who came in and said, give in or die, or you'll die? And then we begin to, by tolerating the urges of the senses, we become, these urges are expunged from our system, actually. And the Yoga Sutras explain a process of sense gratification, and a response to that in our senses is that we retain a memory of certain kinds of sense gratification that we try to enjoy in this world. I say try to enjoy because it's not real enjoyment. But there's an impression that I've contacted sense objects and there was some temporary pleasure. And that creates an impression in my mind. And every time I revisit that pleasure, the experience of it in my mind grows, and it forces me to go back and experience it again. Every time that time of day comes around, oh, I have to do this again. And as we tolerate that, those urges begin to shrink. And actually, as we tolerate the unnecessary urges that come into our senses in our mind, then they gradually go out of our system. And as and when we combine that with the process of bhakti, diverting our attention to Krishna, manmana pavamad bhakto, thinking of Krishna, using our senses in his service, we gain a higher taste. And we actually transfer our working senses and the capabilities of all the senses into the process of devotional service. And the senses begin to enjoy, actually, in a higher level, and they don't need anything else. Yes.
So Prabhuji, regarding humility here, Prabhupada says that one should not be anxious to be honored by others.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna instigated Arjuna to fight, he says that dishonor is worse than death. But in our day-to-day life, both spiritual and material, this anxiety to be appreciated, which could be called as honor, is kind of a big motivation. Because most of the things we do because of peer pressure. Like, for example, some things, at least I don't do when I am amongst the devotees, because I think that devotees may think otherwise about me. So, what is it? Why is it that one should not expect honor? And what is the real sense of humility?
Well, it is a big motivator. I mean, people will die for respect. Actually, there are gang wars that happen, and what's it about? Respect. You didn't respect me? Okay. So this kind of feeling comes from rajas, from the lower modes of nature. However, when we cultivate higher modes of nature like goodness, we may not work, just because we'll be respected, but we work out of duty, a sense of duty. And when we become transcendental, we actually are performing our services and our duties to please Krishna. And as we do so, there's a revelation that comes along with it that Krishna already knows everything I'm doing. In other words, you don't have to advertise it. When I'm in the bodily conception of life, there's a lot of advertising required because I feel incomplete. And it means I have to embellish because my bodily existence is so incomplete. You look in the mirror and go, oh, not again, this is horrible. I'm just, falling apart. And so, I have to constantly keep on the subtle level and on the gross level, pulling it all together so that I can project myself in a certain way. But somebody who's not on the bodily conception of life feels complete in himself or herself because of being a servant of Krishna. And knowing that Krishna is witnessing everything anyway, and therefore that person acts the same whether they're in a front of a group or whether they're behind closed doors, because they're working to please Supersoul. They don't take intoxication or other kinds of things, even if the urge is there, because they know Supersoul is aware. Supersoul is aware, and I'm trying to please Supersoul because I realize I have my relationship, with the Lord and with my spiritual master. That's my impetus in life, and that kind of inspiration then is steady and unstoppable. The other kind where as long as somebody's watching, I'm doing it. And then nobody's watching, or even at work, the boss takes off or whatever, and they say, okay, that's it. But if I'm working for Krishna, then he's always there. And my motivation is different. So we change our motivation for the work and the way we do things because of awareness of who I'm working for, actually, and who I really am. So that it requires realization. It requires realization. And we see in the story of Jad Bharat when he was insulted by King Rahugana, that he didn't take offense because he was not identified with his body. King Rahugana was criticizing Jad Bharat for not being able to carry the palanquin properly and say, what are you, a weakling, or what's wrong with you? But he didn't flare up or become disturbed because he knew I'm not the body anyway. He had practical realization of it.
So when we, I understand what you're saying, but another question that comes to my mind is, suppose if we come to that level, then we are kind of feeling that imbalance because you're going out of all the people and
when a great American president once said that it's amazing how much you can get done if you don't care who gets the credit. Meditate on that. See why you're doing your service or doing anything, and if you don't care who gets the credit for it, you're free more or less from that. You can fully put yourself into it, but you don't care if your name gets on it. I mean, of course, if there's a reason your name should be on it. I mean, Prabhupada, he insisted that his name, founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, was on things. So it doesn't mean we become Mayavadis, but he wanted his name on things for a practical reason, to hold an institution together and that to show that there was, the head, and that's where it's coming from and such. But this idea of we actually have more motivation, and our work ethic is steadier when we become free from this kind of rajasic, desire to always be noticed and such. I interrupted your question, so I'm not sure if I answered it or not.
I think I understand, Prabhu, that
Okay.
your essence that you're saying.
Okay, all right. And someone else had their hand up very enthusiastically over here. I could see it from the corner of my eye.
Actually, I had a similar question. It's like in the spiritual life, knowing that, or kind of trying to realize that you are a very teeny tiny particle in the whole God's creation will help you develop humility. But in the material life, you could be in a particular situation, you could have a particular duty in which you need to advertise, or you need to at least tell that you are not doing worse than the other things. And this might, you might take that mentality from the material life to the spiritual life, and then...
Humility is not defined as simply letting people walk over you. Humility means to do your duty according to how what pleases Krishna the most. Hanuman was extremely humble, but he engaged in jumping across the ocean to Lanka, and then he didn't, when wrapped up by Indrajit with these ropes and tied, he eventually broke free, and when his tail was caught on fire, he used it to burn Lanka to the ground. And someone would say, well, that's not very humble. But we shouldn't mistake and think that humility just means that we have low self-esteem or that we don't do our duty. It means to understand why we're doing it and to do it for Krishna, and to not expect honor for that. So if you're in a situation where you have to take honor for the sake of your job, is that what you're saying? Or you have to advertise yourself. That you could also see in spiritual life. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talked on one Vyasa Puja where he was being honored as a spiritual master. He was saying that what kind of animal am I? People must be saying, what kind of animal is sitting on this seat above everybody else? But then he explained how there's a way in which, out of humility, one may take a position to serve the parampara, to serve the interest of moving things together. After all, someone who, a Bhajananandi who can sit in a cave, it doesn't need any followers, doesn't need an organization, but someone who's taking the risk of preaching must go out and, make so many, forward marches and say, okay, let's go, and, it's got to be up, and this is humility also. And when you're doing your duty in material life so that you can sustain yourself, so you can go on in your life, this is not outside the realm of pure devotional service. In other words, you have a certain job and duty to do, you do it dutifully, and you do what you have to do. Kamasya nendriya pritir labo jivita yavata jivasya tattva jignasya narto yashcheha karmabi. You can use your senses for the sake of maintaining yourself so that you can go on with devotional service. And if that requires advertising, because a business with no sign is a sign of no business. Right? Okay. So now we're going to have a little more kirtan right after this last two questions. Oh, yeah.
Prabhuji, I have a question regarding the 19 items coming automatically. So in this Murugari example, Narada Muni preached, or I'll say threatened, that if you harm animal, then you will suffer again. So Murugari, as an uneducated, he assumed that a saintly person is a good person, and because he told that he should not harm, so that when he is walking, he is also seeing the ants that he should not cross. So that it didn't come automatically, but he threatened actually that if you do like this, it will means you will suffer again. So as a very illiterate person, as a hunter, so he should take a saintly person's words. So he assumed he took that. So for example, in devotional service, because here in the purport it says, if you just follow the devotional service, you will develop all these 19 items. So, but what I feel is you should hear also. But hearing is not a part of devotional service. So you just need to let's say, for example, I chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So it is also said that if you chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that intelligence will develop automatically. But it is not like that. It is hearing also is he is there. So what is your opinion on this purport?
Devotional service is a process. And in the beginning it starts with faith, and faith comes from association with devotees, even unknowingly. And after that, we associate with devotees purposefully, and we make some vow to control our senses and also to chant Hare Krishna. And from that, we come through the process of unsteady bhajan, and then we go through anartha nivritti, and then we come to the stage of steadiness. And all through the process, there are ways in which the Shastra instructs us to act in a certain way, and the spiritual master asks us to act in a certain way. And when we follow those along with the hearing and chanting, then we get everything necessary to advance in devotional service, and all these kinds of things manifest. So some people, like Mugrari, seemingly suddenly they're infused with good qualities after meeting a sadhu, and these are given to us in Shastra to understand what's possible. And many verses talk about how just chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra actually wipes out all the kinds of, if you chant one time offenselessly, wipes out, the sinful reactions and such. And these are given in Shastra to understand what's possible. And generally speaking, there's a gradual process of advancement in which one employs all of these methods in an environment that is conducive to hearing and chanting, to overcome, all the obstacles, and makes progress. Pramanais tat saracharais tarabhyaser narantaram. Bodhayanat manatmanam bhaktim apyutamam labhed. Says Brahma, and this says Lord Vishnu in the Brahma Samhita to Brahma, that by Praman, taking the Shastra, and having good practice. Sadachar means good behavior. And Pramanes tat sadachares tarabhyaser, and practice. A lot of practice. Then one comes to awakening. That's generally it. But we hear sometimes that people are given an honorary degree at a university. I think Bill Cosby got a PhD from someplace, Oprah Winfrey. People who have done something extraordinary. Who was that poet from Calcutta? Tagore. He got an honorary degree, given some PhD at some university. But if I sit around and think, hey, I don't need to go to school because I'll just wait for the honorary degree. They could be knocking at any minute now. We should try. Yes. Ryan.
Haribol.
Haribol.
All right, so while reading the Bhagavad Gita, I'm still lingering on the first couple of chapters where Arjuna is hesitant and fighting his family, which are lined up on the opposing battlefield. I wonder, do you have a good prescription for what would you prescribe for hesitation and decisions when such moral dilemmas face you?
There's three things: Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Shastra means the scripture. Guru means a spiritual master who has imbibed the teachings of the scriptures and has practiced under another spiritual master. And then there's sadhus, which are an example of the general body of very advanced devotees. And from these three sources, we can take help in understanding how to move forward and how to solve any kind of dilemma in life. We triangulate. We take advice from these three. And I can give more details about that later. Okay. Hare Krishna. Oh, goodness. I think we used up all our time. I was going to have a little chanting before the Artik. Aruni? Can we still sing? If I can have a G. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Go Paramanande! Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Go Hari Bol. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai. Hey, Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai. Hey, Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Shri Yuga Dharma Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Savior of the whole world, Ki Jai! Go Premanande Haribo! So now let's put the Shastra deities that have been so mercifully placed before us back into the bookshelf as efficiently and as quickly as possible. And then we'll stand up for more kirtan and artik for their most beautiful lordships, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohanji. Go Premanande Haribo! And we can have the lights on for this, no problem.
One of the book, the paper is yellow. The printing is on the yellow paper. So Is there a way to extend that with the white paper? I'll pay the extra cost for shipping. This book comes from India. Oh. Originally we shipped by ISV. They have got it from there. If you look at the box, can you move it out? So is there a way to get
It's not too cold.
Bring around the front.
Is it on? Oh, it's yeah. Yeah, very nice.
Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Shobha Janavi Tatavani Jagamana Loba Jaga Jana Mana Loba Jaga Jana Mana Loba गौरांगेर अलौकिक शोभा जग जन मन लोभा गौरांगेर अलौकिक शोभा जग जन मन लोभा जग जन मन लोभा जग जन मन लोभा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल जाके नैनीताई चार बामे गदाधारा Nikate Advaita Srini Vaschatradhara Bose Ache Gaurachan Ratna Singhasane Arati Koreha Brahma Adi Deva Gane Nara Hari Adi Kori Chamaradhilaya Jaya Mukunda Basu Goshari Gaya Shanta Baje Kanda Baje Baje Karatala Madhura Mridanga Baje Paramarasala Madhur 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 Baje Madhur 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 Baje Shanta Baje Shanta Baje Madhur 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 Baje Shanta Baje Shanta Baje Madhur 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 Baje Madhur 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 Baje Madhur 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 Baje Hari Bol Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Bahu Koti Chandra Jini Badanahu Jwala Gala Deshe Vanamala Kore Jalamala Shiva Shukanarara Preme Gada Gada Thakur Bhakti Vinoda Jete Gaurara Sampada Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasa Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasa Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasa Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol.